Welcome to BIA Media, Canada's top black media provider. Whether you're looking for content on fashion, art, music, or simple lifestyle, we bring you the best the black community in Ottawa has to offer and so much more. And better yet, do you have a project you need help with? Well, look no further. We provide equipment, studio, and office space, as well as a team of dedicated individuals to help you bring those ideas to life. So information on how to contact us and start creating today. Media your way.
Hello, and welcome to Getting Real with Paula. My name is Paula Alphonse, and tonight we are talking with Debbie Miller. You might not know who she is, but I'll tell you a little more about that. I met Debbie about 20 years ago when both our set of kids were doing dance class. And I remember even back then, there was such a peaceful presence about her. And I didn't even know back then that she was a police officer. So when you figured it out, it's like, oh my God, she seems way too sweet to be a police officer. But there is something about this woman, which is the character, her integrity, as well as her genuine kindness. So we're gonna have this conversation. And I know she's a little shy because, she doesn't like people paying attention to her in that context. So we're going to try and forget about the camera and have a genuine conversation. So, good evening.
Good evening, Paula. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure. Can you give us a little bit of information as to who you are, what you do, and what brought you to this conversation?
Great question. Who I am. I'm a mother. I'm a sister. I'm a wife. I'm also a police officer. A photographer. I wear many hats. I can start off by saying that I'm originally from Jamaica. My mother decided that she wanted to come to Canada and bring her children here for a better life. And so I've been here for a long time. Grew up in the west end of the city. I must say that I also come from a long line of strong, independent women. Myself and my three brothers came with my mother to Ottawa. And as you can imagine, being an only girl in the family, I had to put my shoulders up straight and put my elbows out to make my own space. Growing up in the west end of the city was challenging in its own because we grew up in community housing. But I always say the community housing was our community inside a bigger community in that. So that's where I come from, and growing up in the West End allowed me to experience a lot of different things that I probably wouldn't have experienced growing up somewhere else in the community. So I'm grateful for the experience.
So I'm going to ask you to be a little more specific, because you talked about who you are, which is wonderful because it gives us context. What made you choose to be a police officer?
I always tell people I actually didn't choose to be a police officer. Policing found me. I went to Carleton University. Actually, I'll start back a little bit earlier because I think that's important. Growing up in the West End, I went to Woodruff High School. And when I was in high school, I played all kinds of sports. I volunteered way back then. And I knew from then that I wanted to give back to my community. I just wasn't sure how that was going to show up. Thought about teaching, thought about being a lawyer. Eventually, I went to university, and when I was in university, I took sociology, anthropology, so learning a little bit more about people, communities, and so forth. But I was looking for a summer job. I needed to pay some bills, And at Carleton University, they had an employment office. So I went into the employment office and I saw a poster that was put up from the National Capital Alliance on Race Relations. And on the poster, they were giving visible minorities, was the term back then, and Indigenous women an opportunity to consider policing as a profession. And so I applied, and I was one of 12 people chosen out of 200 and change to work within the Ottawa Police. And so this would give me an opportunity to see policing from a different aspect, as opposed to in the community I grew up in, that police came in and you would see them from that angle. So that's why I always say policing chose me.
Yeah.
Because I was not looking for it. I just wanted a summer job. This sounded interesting. And it was from that opportunity that I realized, okay, this is a different aspect. And there was also nobody that looked like me that worked within the police organization. So that piqued my interest. And I was also asked by police officers there, did I ever consider policing? I'm like, no, not really. And then as more time went on, then I realized, okay, this is something that I could possibly do. And that's how I would say that I started my quest into policing.
So you went for a summer job.
Yep. I did. And it was for the summer, and then I did a good job and I was asked to come back the following summer. And then from there, I also ended up applying for a scholarship, and it was called the Thomas G. Flanagan Scholarship. And that was the former chief who realized that he was actually a trailblazer in his own time, because he realized the importance of diversity. And so being the first recipient of that scholarship, that actually solidified my interest into policing. So I completed my university and I ended up working with Ottawa Police full-time as a civilian, and then eventually got hired in 1994 as one of 5 black female officers ever hired by Ottawa Police back then.
What were some of your hopes and dreams when you started?
I was very young when I joined, and so when I was joining, my whole purpose was to make a difference in my community, help keep the community safe, also be a part of change that needed to happen. Because again, even up until this day, 30 years later, we're still looking at a poor relationship with the racialized community, the black community, and police. So I wanted to be able to contribute to educating police officers, as well as bridging the gap between our community and the policing community.
I'm going to ask you about what are some of those common public health misconceptions about the job that you do?
I think the biggest one is that we're all in it for the money and the power. And I always say you couldn't pay people enough money to run towards gunfire, to go knock on somebody's door at 2 o'clock in the morning to tell them that a loved one was killed, or go to do a wellness check. And once you get to the residence, you realize that the person has passed away and they've been there by themselves. So, and also seeing things that most people will never see in their lifetime. So the amount of money could never cover that. I think most people, and I can speak for myself, going into this profession, it was to work with my community to make it a better place, and to be there when people are in their worst moments, the lowest point in their life, and to be able to help them see that there is light at the end of that tunnel.
You know what? I'm listening to you, and my brain is going into all of those things that you must have seen, and I know you're not going to share all of them or many of them with us. I don't think that never was a thought that came to my mind in terms of money, because I don't even know how much they're paying you, and it doesn't matter. For me, even if you were to give me $1 million a day, I would still not be doing that job. So thank you. Whatever they're paying you, it's way more than the stress that most of us would handle. In hindsight, as you're getting ready to retire from the public service, what are some of those thoughts, or I would say advice, you would want to give other women entering the police force?
I think the biggest one I would give is that you deserve to be there. Okay. And to show up as yourself, your authentic self, with your hair braided, all that stuff. I think it's important because you're coming into a profession where, well, when I joined, it wasn't ready for me. They recognized the need to have us, but the structures in place, the supports weren't there. And going into it, I realized early on that it wasn't there, and that it was my responsibility, along with my other co-workers, to build that space for us. And so coming in, knowing that you belong, to be your authentic self, and to use your voice early. For me, I developed that later on as I became more comfortable in understanding the profession. Then my voice came with it. And as I got older, I really didn't care that people didn't want to hear it. I knew that it was necessary for it to be heard. And so sitting at those tables is making space at that table. And if the table's not there, building that table and inviting others to come and join. So that's the advice I would give them.
Thank you. Oof. I'm hearing you talk, and you know we know all the negative publicity that we've lived in the last few years with the pandemic, with the George Floyd's death, and in my mind I'm thinking, how did you manage to keep your sanity as well as your spirits through it all? Because 30 years of seeing people in their worst state must not be easy.
No, but I also saw people in a good state as well once they were able to get the help that they needed.
Okay.
So you get to see that you actually made an impact.
Okay.
And then building the trust within the community, volunteered in the community while I was policing, when I was off, and I made sure to bring my kids with me. I have two daughters, so that they understood the importance of being a part of their community and making a difference. Surviving through the pandemic and the death of George Floyd, it was challenging. I will say that when George Floyd was unjustly murdered, that changed. I knew that would change policing in our community and communities across the world. And so how do I adjust to that, as well as being a Black woman and knowing what happened should have never happened. So I was grieving in ways that I didn't really realize that I was grieving. And so in order to do something or deal with that anger, frustration, I chose to use my platform as a police officer, the trust that I had built in my community, as well as use my artistic talent as a photographer, and put them together to do a photo essay and allow for members of our community to come together, to grieve, to share their feelings, and to look at what can we do as a community to get through this and to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Even though it wasn't in the Ottawa community, but it impacted our community and communities around the world. So I used my photography and my platform to be a part of that change.
And you're being extremely modest. The way she says she used her platform. Tell us a little more about the photo essay, what that involved, were the people that came to speak to you, and how do you leave a legacy after something like that?
I didn't go in it to leave a legacy, and what ended up happening was much more than I thought would ever happen. It was, I really needed a place to grieve. And being a Black officer and having other officers who were Black and feeling that we were stuck in the middle, that the community was upset at police, and the police were upset because they didn't understand, okay, what is this? So I chose to be a part of the change, and it was having that conversation with my two daughters. They're both in their 20s, and I just said, I need to do something. And I said, maybe I can use my photography as a way to do that. And through that conversation, it ended up that we would invite people in our community to come, young men, mothers, women, to have these conversations. And knowing you have children as well, social media was the first place they went. So they put it out to their friends, and I had people coming like there was no tomorrow to want to be a part of this. And again, because you're able to build that trust, I was able to build that trust in my community. People put everything aside This was during the pandemic, so we followed the protocols, the rules, but they wanted to be a part of it. And I have to thank Paula from Curly Hair Designs, because she was the first to open her hair studio, to invite us in to use the safe space for people to come. And then Jehu Productions was part of the videographer that came and assisted us to do the video, because it's a photo essay that ended up being called hashtag I have no words, because I couldn't find my words. And many people who came could not find their words. But then there was the other part where hashtag these are my words. So when they showed up, these were the words that they chose. So community came, and what I asked them to do is to find a word or a phrase that best describes how they're feeling, and to write it on a cue card. So what they did is they wrote it on the cue card, they held it up, and I photographed it. And some of those words were just, and phrases were so empowering and just so thought-provoking and emotional, and wrapped up in one. And some chose to write their words, and those who couldn't find their voice, they wrote, but those who could were part of the video and shared how they felt. And we put it together, and I will tell you, when we were doing the taping of this, I had young men crying. I had mothers holding their children tight, their young black men tight, because of the fear, could this be my child?
Could have.
And those conversations, and just hearing, and at the end of the day, we got to hear the community's cries, the community's trauma, and I use that as a learning opportunity for me as a police officer, when I go out to do my job, and remembering what I've heard and what I've been told, as well as educating my co-workers when they're going out into the community. When they pull somebody over that is black and they tell them, you're pulling me over again, that they have a better understanding that this is lived trauma.
Yes.
This is historical. So take that extra second to explain why I'm pulling you over, and that will at least allow for a discussion to happen. So that was, at the end of the day, that ended up being what I learned from it, and it also was an opportunity for the community to tell us what they needed from us.
I'm gonna keep digging, because there's something, you know, just have to do this.
Okay.
Because she's being very modest, I'll be honest with you, she's modest. Talk to me about RCMP.
Okay. Well, as I said, it started off as a way to just hear other people's concerns and to share in their grief. At the end of it, I ended up putting a book together called hashtag I have no words. And it was a book that had all the photos in it. It had the different quotes from community members who couldn't be part of the photography portion, but sent in their comments. And at the back of the book, I had, I think, about 5 to 7 questions that allowed for community members to sit and have that difficult conversation. When you're talking about race, when you're talking about murder and the police, those are uncomfortable conversations. So to give them some talking points, some questions that they can start asking. At the end of the day, RCMP learned about my book, and they wanted to have that as part of their diversity training, as well as the video. So they chose to get copies of the book and ship it across Canada to their members to utilize it as part of a learning opportunity and to assist them in doing their job.
For those of the audience that might not be familiar with Canada and our policing system, can you tell us what is the RCMP?
The Royal Mounted Police.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're the ones watching over whole of Canada.
Yes.
In those areas where the cities don't have a police corps themselves.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So
those
we're the local city police. Is where I work, and then they work all over Canada.
That's it. And they're also the people that are working in those reserves.
Right, remote.
Okay, remote
Areas in our community.
Just, for those of you who don't know,
Yes,
'cause,
you're right.
we're using all kinds of acronyms. It's familiar to us, but maybe some of our audience might not be.
And they're the most recognizable police service, because they've got the red serge.
Yeah, the
boots.
dress.
Yeah.
Just do a quick search if you want to find out. RCMP, and then you're going to find their costume. It's not a costume, their uniform.
Their uniform.
My bad. So, thinking back to you 30 years in the public service, what do you want to see for the future generation of racialized officers?
I want us to see all of us in our police service. That when you see a police officer, that you see somebody that looks like you. And knowing that they have that familiarity of, okay, where I come from. And so having those conversations, I want to see women and racialized members in all ranks in police services. Because we deserve to be there. We have the skills, we have the talents. And I believe the goal of police services, when they're looking at diversifying their organization and having it represent the community, that includes having members in all levels and all sections within the police service.
Which is only fair. Which is only fair. We want them everywhere, not just where it shows, but they don't have as much power. I will go and share something with my audience because she hasn't mentioned it so far. The woman you're looking at is actually the second highest ranking Black female leader within the history of Ottawa Police. See? She didn't mention any of that. How, thinking back to 30 years ago, how does it feel to be retiring and know that you've actually reached those higher ranks?
It's pretty amazing. If I can go back to talk about the women that have been in my life, my mother is my role model. She set the groundwork for me, so there was no failing, I would say, because she set,
not optional.
It wasn't optional. She set the bar pretty high, and she raised 4 children full-time, obviously, went to school full-time to become a nurse as well, worked full-time. And so when she got her nursing degree, she was 50. And she got her driver's license, she was 50. And here I am at the age of 50, and I'm retiring from my career when she was beginning her career. So I will say she set that example so that I could work hard early on to be able to retire at this age and to go on to do other things should I choose to do other things. So I think that's important when we talk about role models and looking at them and their contribution. It was because of what I saw, what she represented to me, that I was able to get to where I am, as well as with family, my community supporting me. And I think the other thing I would say that I learned early on in my career is that my fellow co-worker who is Black, Isabel Granger, who is the highest ranking female officer in Ottawa Police.
I was going to come there. Thank you for mentioning it, because there's 2 of them for us here.
She was a mentor to me. We went through difficult times to get success, and all other women who look like me coming up success. So we weren't competing against each other, we were supporting each other. And I think that's important because a lot of the times when you have women, and there's not many of us in senior positions, that we think that we're competing against each other. We're not. Your success is my success. And I think if we move that way and we understand that, and that you develop that trust and understanding, that you're setting the groundwork for everybody else who comes up after you.
The bar is high. I'm just saying, the bar is high. And I like the fact that the bar is high because each generation should be able to go further than the one before.
Absolutely.
And if we're able to teach our kids that their dreams, their hopes are achievable, it makes for a better world for everyone.
But I also think if we show them that the ocean is there for them, that they can do anything they choose to be, and that they don't have to go down a certain path that somebody's telling them, okay, well, you should become a nurse. Because when I was in high school, I was told, okay, go to the female jobs. So, and I'm like, but that wasn't for me, even though I have many nurses in my family, and I respect and I thank them for that, but we wanted to do something different. So we see this generation coming up, and they're venturing into different areas, which is fantastic. So they will be the first setting the bar, creating that table. And I look forward to seeing that.
And I love what you just said from the perspective. I remember it for me when I was finishing high school and then considering what am I going to do for the rest of my life. And in my family, there were 2 tracks. You either were going to go the health area, or you're going teacher as education. So those were the 2 options. And to this day, we're almost split. Separated in those 2, and I ended up being a pharmacist, and then realized I don't really like that no more. So you switch. And that's what I like about this younger generation is just they're not tied to that label that they started with, and they have that open mind to say, if this is not working, I try something else. While my generation is just, at least wait till you retire and get your pension and then you could do something else. So which means I'll be miserable for I don't know how many years. Yeah. So don't do that. Don't do that. So figure out what it is that you want. And as you've mentioned, your mom was in her 50s when she started her career. There's no age. Yeah. You decide what it is that you want.
But that just tells you the resilience.
Oh, absolutely.
She wasn't giving up, and she had her challenges as well. Mm-hmm. And as for the generation that's coming up, what is more telling is that they're coming up that much more educated. So now they have the choices to make to go where they want to go, as opposed to only going down this route because they don't have what they need to
and because I don't know of anything else. Right. So that sense of the world is your oyster makes a lot more sense to them than it did for us. Because for me, it was like, I'm scared, I don't know. To me, there were two options. Those were the two options. And then you realize there's so much more. You would have told me back then, you might not know, Paula is a strong introvert, that I would be here doing interviews with people. It would be like, oh, please, not me. My sister used to do that, and she was so natural at it. But that wasn't in my brain at all. And that's the part. You can reinvent yourself at any given time.
But I think the important thing that you did say there as well, Paula, or what I'm taking from it, is that we may have a certain idea of where we're supposed to go. Our parents may have that idea. When I was joining policing, my family didn't want me to join policing. They were surprised I was going there, and so they had to get used to having me as a police officer. And I always tell the joke that my mom would ask me throughout my career, are you sure this is something you want to do? And then when I told her I was retiring, she says, are you sure this is something you want to do? So, but she supported me. And I think as parents, that's one of the things that we have to realize, is that we may want our kids to go down a certain path, but they may not want to go that way. And so how do we show up for them and encourage them to follow their dreams and support them that way? So she followed me. She questioned me along the way. So did my brothers. Yeah. But at the end of the day, anything that I did, they supported me.
Definitely. I'm all about boundaries. You know this by now. So I'm going to ask, and I think I might have some idea, but we'll see. What boundary have you implemented in your personal and whole professional life that has allowed for you to grow as the person that you are?
So I'll be honest, because my kids will be watching this, and they're going to tell you that I have no boundaries. Because I take calls late at night from community members and so forth. So I'm learning as I go, even 30 years along the line. But what I am realizing is that if I'm not healthy, if I'm not rested, then I can't support other people. So it's setting those timelines and those boundaries. Is it an emergency that I have to call back? Or can I wait and call you back another day? As well as I work out. I do my physical fitness to keep my mind healthy and body healthy, as well as I do my photography. So I find that time and I squirrel it away, and I will leave the phone on mute because I use my phone as well as part of my photography as I move along and throughout the community. But really learning how to be just with myself. I'm a work in progress. For sure. So there's lots of words from my mouth. Yes, we are all work in progress, and there's nothing wrong with it. And it's the part where on the outside, I can look at you, and in my mind, like, she is such a masterpiece. But even as a masterpiece, we're still work in progress. We still have things, and that's what makes life still interesting, at least to me. If it was, okay, now we're done, I've done everything I needed to do, it's just like, what's left? So no, need to figure out something else. Yeah. So thank you for sharing. So moving on to the next stage of your life, what would be some of the key messages you would want to leave with our listeners? I would say enjoy life. Enjoy the blessings that you have, that you can move, that you can get up, that you have a roof over your head. As I've said before, I've been in a profession where I've seen people at their worst, where they lost everything. And I would say that policing has taught me to really appreciate the life that I do have. But for those who are just starting their career or in the middle of their career, make the decisions for yourself. Choose to live on the wild side. Because of the profession I was in, I had to obviously, there's people always watching you, but you need to be able to enjoy your life. So figure out what that is. And when the time comes to move along and pass the torch to the next generation of game changers, pass it. Because you've set the boundaries, you've set the standard for them to follow. And so now feel comfortable in moving forward. But really just enjoying life. And I think the pandemic, I will say, has definitely taught me that more than anything. Love your family, celebrate them, celebrate the little things. Celebrate the little things. You got up this morning. That's a celebration in itself.
You're still breathing.
You're still breathing. And I think that's, if you want to pick one thing, celebrate the little things.
And I think at least for me, the pandemic has taught me, we are spending way too much time on those things that didn't go the right way instead of celebrating what is.
Yeah.
And that's the part that we all need to be a little more aware of. Because, maybe my makeup didn't end up exactly how I wanted, but it still looks good. We'll still work on it and be better the next time. Whatever it is that you're doing, just remember, it's not whatever, even if it feels as though this is the end, it is not the end. We're talking to a police officer. She understands the end. So this is the part where for each and every one of us, it's that reminder. Every little second counts.
Yep. And you may be going through something, and I've learned over the 30 years, you're going through something for a reason. There is something at the end of it. And as you go through it, it's just, this is where your resilience, this is where your tribe of people that you've put together to support you step in and be willing to accept that help. But on the other side, there's just so much more.
There's always more. There's always more. I'm also in my 50s, and I have to say, at this point, I don't really care what other people think.
Yep.
It is really about, let me try those things I've always wanted to, or that I was scared of. And I'm like, let's see. I might like it, I might not like it, but at least I tried. And that's the part. For me, I don't want to transition and have regrets. So it's just, I'm living out. When I'm leaving, it's like no regrets.
Absolutely.
I tell my kids I love them every single day. So therefore, don't care. If something happens, you don't have to be sorry because I didn't tell my mom. She knows. So don't worry. I know. So how can people get in contact with you in terms of your photography and some of the things? Because, don't go looking for her to give her more jobs. She wants to relax a little. So
I'm on Instagram, DHM Photography. I try to post a photo every day or every other day because, again, that's my way of just relaxing and just viewing the world that is before me and how it's changing. So social media is there. I have a website as well. DHM Photography is another option of getting a hold of me.
So we want to see some of it. Trust me, she does really good work. I love her photography, and I didn't know she was doing that until we started talking. So it's just like so many layers to this woman. So do check her on the social media or on our website at dhmphotography.ca. So thank you very much, Debbie.
Thank you, Paula, for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure. I could have you for so many more conversations.
Okay.
Ottawa's Black Business Alliance, a place where you can learn to be your own person and build the future you want for yourself. Our mission is to help young entrepreneurs achieve their business goals through the best coaching, managing, consulting, and a slew of other services. Together, we can become a pillar in the Afro-Canadian community. Don't hesitate to contact us through our website at www.oba.ca, and remember that building tomorrow starts today. OBA Consulting. Take hold of your future.